Compression removed silence, yet left rhythm intact. Noise was order disguised as randomness. The satellite continued its loop. Solar panels faced the light, current flowed, charge balanced. Telemetry marked a steady flow of bits per second. Every byte a story of heat under ice. Downlink complete, checksum verified. The burst reached servers in Pasadena. Human eyes stared at screens lit by code. No color, no sound, only numbers mapping what machines had seen. One scientist leaned forward. The lines curved just enough to break expectation. Mars, for that moment, was not still. The data vibrated as though the planet itself had spoken. Inside each array, capacitors cooled, waiting for next dawn. The orbit would repeat in 7 hours. Silence returned to the relay. No wind, no air, only the hum of precision. The mechanical world folded itself back into routine. The pulse surge ended. In the deep, only data remained. On Earth, morning arrived hours later. The data had already crossed the void. Screens glowed in a quiet lab. Soft blue light bending across faces. Coffee cooled beside notebooks filled with figures and dust-colored drawings. Someone whispered the word methane, as though it might vanish if spoken too loud. In that whisper lived decades of waiting. Each discovery felt both new and remembered, like hearing an echo of a question never fully asked. So, Mars had no breath, yet something beneath its frost moved in rhythm with light. The scientist traced graphs with fingertips, following the slight rise at dawn. It resembled a heartbeat, faint and cyclical, a pattern like human sleep, deep, then shallow, then still. Outside the lab, morning fog rolled through the hills of California. The air smelled of wet metal and grass. For a moment, one could imagine Mars breathing too, hidden under ice and silence. A human hand hovered over the keyboard. Every motion here, 10 minutes late there. Between two planets, light carried thought. Between thought and proof, only time. Curiosity, the rover older than a decade, had once sent back a similar trace. Then silence. Now, two voices, the orbiter and the analyzer, spoke together. The rhythm was undeniable, like two clocks, separated yet synchronized by the same dawn. The engineers replayed the data again. They remembered their own mornings, launch days, long nights, and the first signal from orbit. The numbers meant more than gas. They meant persistence, the kind only machines and people share. A scientist paused the display. She looked at the faint curve of methane and thought of breath-fogging glass on a cold day. The same shape, the same transience. Each spike in the data felt like a pulse of life. Though logic said otherwise, the paradox lingered. The colder the world, the warmer its mystery. Under frozen air, warmth persisted, not as fire, but as motion. On Earth, the room fell silent. Someone laughed softly, not from humor but disbelief. How could so small a trace feel so human? No one answered. They only watched the line, repeating in quiet grace. On Earth, methane blooms in wetlands, under layers of decaying reeds. Tiny organisms breathe in darkness, unseen yet constant. On Mars, there was only rock, yet something imitated that same slow exhale. A thin pause stretched across the lab. Someone adjusted their glasses, eyes reflecting the flicker of red lines. The signal was weak, yes, but true. It told of a process older than biology, or maybe not. A hand reached for a mug and found it empty. A notebook closed, edges stained with graphite and dust. A voice said, almost to itself, "It feels alive, doesn't it?" No one replied, yet everyone smiled. Outside, sunlight touched the glass. The reflection of the hills bent across the monitor screen. In that brief shimmer, Mars and Earth shared one light, a parallel dawn, half a world apart. If warmth could think, it might look like this. If silence could speak, It would sound like this pattern of data repeating. The act of observation had become its own mirror. The team archived the run, labeled the surge, and prepared for the next orbit, but something in their eyes stayed distant, as if still watching that pale red sky. They knew they might never find the cause, and yet they would listen again. Because the human story is not about certainty, but attention. To look, even when answers fade. To wait, even when signals fall silent. To recognize warmth where no fire burns. The screen dimmed. The last graph line glowed faintly, a red trace curving upward into nothing. It looked like breath. It looked like dawn. The paradox stood clear. Warmth beneath frozen air. Stillness breathing motion. Silence shaping sound. If methane truly rose at dawn, then the cold was not complete. Something below refused stillness. Whether chemical or ancient, it moved with the sun. NASA's data spoke of cycles, not accidents. Each dawn, a whisper repeated, steady as thought. Each night, the planet sealed itself again. The conflict was not between truth and error, but between seeing and believing. To believe was to humanize the unknown. To see was to strip it bare. Yet the instruments blurred that line. They turned absence into pattern, and pattern into question. Light became language. Cold became rhythm. The frost hides heat, but the numbers remember, so a line between silence and breath. This was the balance, proof bound to wonder. Mars had given nothing certain, only the persistence of maybe, and still, that was enough to keep the machines awake through every orbit. Data does not dream, yet it remembers. Each orbit added another pulse, faint but regular. Over 10 dawns, the methane curve held its rhythm. The trace gas orbiter confirmed the value within error limits. The analyzer matched the same hours, the same slope, the same breath. This was the echo, an echo not of sound, but of persistence. One molecule released under frost, one photon caught above, two instruments separated by height and time, agreeing without words. To human eyes, it was just a line, but within that line lay symmetry. Every rise met its fall. Every question mirrored a pulse of light. Certainty was small, but it existed, shaped like patience. In Pasadena, the scientists replayed the signal once more. No anomalies, no faults, no reason to erase. Methane had been there, fleeting but real. For a moment, the planet breathed, then sealed itself again. The act of measuring had caught a moment older than memory. One scientist leaned back, eyes unfocused. Outside, clouds drifted like pale dust storms. The same laws ruled both skies. On Mars, ice cracked under sunrise. On Earth, condensation gathered on the window edge. Two worlds joined by light, both transient, both searching. She exhaled, steady and small, as though sinking to the pulse recorded millions of kilometers away. The revelation was not about life, but about endurance. Even silence moves if you wait long enough. Even cold air hides a trace of fire. And in that trace, the mind finds kinship. The numbers spoke without metaphor, yet meaning bloomed in the spaces between decimals. Data became story. Story became attention. Mars had offered no confession, only an equation made visible for a moment, then buried again in the next night. But that was enough. To witness something that resists explanation is its own kind of truth. From orbit, the red horizon curved beneath the spacecraft. Sunlight reached its panels. Power surged. Telemetry steadied. The machine breathed in electrons and released them as motion. Its body was metal, but its rhythm human. Knowledge does not rest in what is found, but in the act of continuing to look. Each dawn from now would hold the same question. Each signal, the same possibility. In that repetition, wonder endured. The numbers glowed faintly on a distant screen, and the silence held its form. Light folds back into itself. The orbit fades beyond thought. Numbers dissolve into shimmer. Graphs melt into quiet shape. The methane curve drifts like mist across a dawn that no longer needs measuring. Sensors cool, mirrors frost, signals dim to memory. All that remains is a rhythm without code. The pulse of a world turning once more into silence. From above, Mars no longer looks like data. It looks like breath suspended in glass. The red dust softens. The shadows blend with morning. The frost line gleams, a single ribbon of light along the crater rim. Below, no machine moves. No wave transmits. Only the echo of energy exchanging between rock and air. Motion becoming perception. Perception becoming pause. What was once temperature and spectrum becomes color and stillness. The orbit is now a thought. The detector a faint hum inside memory. What remains is attention, fragile as the frost it describes. Somewhere in the archive, a file closes. No one watches, but the act completes itself. The last photon fades into the dark between planets. Silence resumes its orbit. The sky above Mars has no sound, only light, slow and steady, crossing the thin horizon. The frost has sealed again. The warmth beneath waits for another dawn. In orbit, the trace gas orbiter drifts through the planet's shadow. Solar panels turn, tracing memory more than motion. The instruments rest, cooled to silence. The signal from the last pass still hums faintly in its memory core. On Earth, night deepens around quiet buildings. Screens dim. The data sleeps. What remains is a kind of knowing that has no conclusion. The machines have done their work. The light has passed through glass, then through air, then into thought. Now, only stillness holds the record. Precision rose, certainty fell. The frost remembers the warmth it once released. So does the mind that measured it. There is rest in the pause between signals. There is room for breath beneath quiet sky. And then, stillness.